So, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Leadership comes in many forms, including a leader who fights what he or she thinks is right, and a leader who admits when he or she is wrong. Most people only have one of these qualities. To be a great leader, you need both. JFK was one of those leaders, and his actions left an important mark on society. A legacy is like a star. Sometimes it glows dimly and sometimes brightly, but it is always there, a light in the darkness to guide the way. To show you what's right from what's wrong. To show you what could and couldn't happen. To make the impossible seem possible. JFK left a legacy like that. A steady light in the sky showing us which way to go.
His leadership and legacy will be shown as we saunter through his life. We will see some of the external influences that made him a leader and that were the kernels for his legacy. We will start our journey with John F. Kennedy's family, talking about the people who shaped his young life. His father's name was Joseph B. Kennedy. He lived between 1880 and 1964. He was a self-made millionaire. He was a strong believer in family and loyalty, qualities he instilled in his children. He taught each child that being second was never good enough. His mother's name was Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy. She lived between 1890 and 1995. On October 7, 1914, at the age of 24, she married Joseph Kennedy. She was a very devout Catholic and a procrustant parent. This turned JFK into a rebel, which allowed him to see the world differently. On May 29, 1917, JFK was born near the end of World War I. He was the second oldest child. By the age of 15, he had 9 siblings. The Kennedys were a competitive, very loyal, and tight-knit family. He learned to enhance his charm to survive in such a large household. JFK's father expected his firstborn son, Joseph Jr., to become President of the United States. On comparison, the family stated that if a mosquito bit JFK, the mosquito would be lucky to live. Joseph Jr. and JFK were very competitive. Once as children, they rode their bikes into each other, both not wanting to be the first to change directions. This competitive attitude drove JFK to push himself harder than others around him. At the age of 13, he left the house to attend boarding school. As a child, JFK attended Choate boarding school during the Depression. He was a sickly during all of his school years. He was highly intelligent and a leader, but did poorly in school since he was a daydreamer and a practical joker. Upon graduation, he attended college, first at Princeton University, but got very sick with gastrointestinal illness and had to miss most of the year. After his recovery, he applied and was accepted at Harvard like his brother. He graduated in June 1940 with a bachelor's in science, cum laude, in international affairs. He joined the Navy in October 1941, shortly before the U.S. joined the fight in World War II. On March 6, 1943, he became lieutenant commander for the PT-109 Pacific Patrol torpedo boat with a crew of 13 people. One dark night, on August 2, 1943, JFK's PT-109 boat was hit by Japanese battleships, cutting the boat in half. 2 of the men died upon impact and several were badly burned. JFK rallied the survivors and helped carry one of the more badly injured soldiers during 5 hours to Pudding Island, a few miles away. The same night, JFK swam back and waited all night for the U.S. boat to pass by. None did, so he swam back to the island. A few days later, they all swam to Olasana Island, looking for food and water, but without success. He and another sailor swam to another island and found food and water. He returned to Olasana Island and found 2 locals and asked them to deliver a message written on a coconut by JFK. A total of 8 days passed before they were rescued. A year later, on August 12, 1944, his big brother, Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., flew a volunteer secret bombing mission and was killed in action. JFK's greatest hero and rival was now gone, and his family looked to him to fulfill their political dreams. JFK was a war hero and a compelling speaker, which gave him an edge when he ran for office. He was elected and served as a U.S. Congressman between 1947 and 1953, the height of the Cold War. He then ran for U.S. Senator and was elected at the age of 36 and served between 1953 and 1961. He was old enough to become president, and that would be his next step. Senator John F. Kennedy ran for the United States presidency in the 1960 election. His entire family assisted in his campaign, working relentlessly. He would become the second Roman Catholic presidential nominee for a major party. He ran against Hubert Humphrey, Lyndon B. Johnson, also known as LBJ, and other Democratic nominees. His first major hurdle was West Virginia, a state that was primarily Protestant, and he won! This was a turning point for him winning the Democratic nomination by 2 votes on the first ballot over LBJ. JFK selected LBJ as his running mate, and that was a bold and calculated move, since that was unheard of at the time. Now he had to run against Vice President Richard Nixon, the Republican nominee for presidency. One election night, an exhausted JFK went to sleep while votes were still being counted late into the night. JFK was woken by his 3-year-old daughter, Caroline, saying, "Good morning, Mr. President." JFK, the Vice President LBJ, won the popular vote by only 100,000 votes over Nixon. TV was the new, fastest growing media at the time, and the Kennedy-Nixon debates were the first presidential debates to be televised. Many historians say that TV debates made the difference in him winning the election, with 77 million viewers, which was 44% of the population. JFK's leadership in front of the camera and good looks made an impact on the viewers. Unknown to the country, Nixon was recovering from a knee injury and looked nervous during the first debate. In his first few months in office on October 14, 1960, he addressed 5,000 students and challenged them to join a service that would help developing countries. He later created the Peace Corps on March 1, 1961. One of his many legacies, the Peace Corps keeps growing today with the United States and touches nations all over the world. A few months in office, JFK was presented with an operation to invade Cuba via Cuban nationalists. This was developed by the prior administration, President Eisenhower. JFK approved the plan. After it failed, it was called the Bay of Pigs. JFK's approval rates went up after admitting to the nation that he was wrong to approve the invasion. Unfortunately, it all broke apart 1,000 days into office. On November 22, 1963, his presidency was cut short by an assassin's bullet. JFK's wife quoted her husband's favorite line from Camelot, days after his death, which she believed represented his presidency. "Don't let it be forgot that once there was a spot, for one brief shining moment, that was known as Camelot." The following videos represent the highlights of JFK's presidency.
Or submission.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
The path we have chosen for the present is full of hazards, as all paths are. But it is the one most consistent with our character and courage as a nation and our commitments around the world. The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it. And one path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender or submission.
Primarily with a moral issue.
To go to the moon.
It is as old as the Scriptures and is as clear as the American Constitution. The heart of the question is whether all Americans are to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities, whether we are going to treat our fellow Americans as we want to be treated. If an American, because his skin is dark, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public, if he cannot send his children to the best public school available, if he cannot vote for the public officials who represent him, if, in short, he cannot enjoy the full and free life which all of us want, then who among us would be content to have the color of his skin changed?
All free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin. And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner.
Today, more than half of Americans were not yet born when JFK lived, so it is more important than ever to understand his legacy and not just the fact that he was the 4th president that was assassinated. One of JFK's favorite quotes best represents the essence of his leadership and legacy. The poet Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. wrote, "I find the great things in this world is not so much where we stand, as in what direction we are moving. To reach the port of heaven, we must sail sometimes with the wind and sometimes against it. But we must sail, and not drift nor lie at anchor." This quote best identifies with JFK's leadership and his legacy as a man, as a war hero, as a representative of our legislative branch, and as our 35th president.